He's just so angry with this woman. He couldn't even get the sentence out, but the words rice, shit, and cunt came out. And he burned off into the distance.
Hi, I'm Andy.
And I'm Roger,
And welcome to The Middle,
where we try to have thoughtful conversations
about awkward topics
on our search to find the middle.
That's fatphobic.
I don't feel war. I just order halfway to Siwa.
A few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
I act as if God exists.
Put your masks on.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
Andy, how you doing?
Oh yeah, not too bad. Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good.
Oh, I've got to tell you, I've been out and about and spending way too much time at shopping centres during the Christmas period, and I thought I saw the worst behaviour in the seafood line, but actually something I saw this week topped that. It's something that I've always kind of heard. I thought it was a bit of an urban legend, but I actually saw it, play out in front of my very own eyes, and that was going through a packed car park, everyone's stressed and wound up tight, and then an Asian woman running in flip-flops into an empty space to reserve it while they brought the car around and someone getting into an argument about it, with them. So it was, and I was kind of stuck in the kind of loop. So I had no choice but to ogle the whole thing with glee, knowing that I would talk about it later to you.
Did you film it?
I didn't film it, no, because that's the problem with the CarPlay system. but people were filming it, so I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up online or something like that. And I just thought to myself, oh man, I thought this was an urban legend, that people pretended to do this online, right? It was all acted or staged, but here I saw it in front of my very own eyes, and I'm like, why did it have to be an Asian woman? I don't know. What's your thoughts? And then I got to thinking: is there any acceptable circumstance that this would be, behavior that would fly?
Oh, I think just as a general thing, this is a really good example of society in general, right? We've got written rules, legislation, rules, regulation, policies, whatever. But then so much of our day-to-day life are there all these unwritten rules of manners, behavior, and even just something like a queue. What is a queue other than everyone just agrees not to not to fuck someone else over, right? It's let's just be orderly about this, and
it's about respect for other people.
Yeah, and it's like when you're at a bar and the doofus behind the bar wants to serve you before someone else, and you go, oh no, just serve the other guy first, he was here before me, kind of that. That's kind of, it's amazing everyone does that. It's a sense of, it's not oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'll take, I'll jump in front of the queue kind of thing. There's a sort of a common sense of respect for each other. So I think in that setting, the car park, now I know you say an Asian woman or whatever, how unfortunate, but let's be honest, there's a different set of rules in Asia, right? And different countries have different rules in Asia, so it's not Asia is this homogenous thing. But I spent a year living in China, and I can tell you the rules that we follow here are not the rules they follow there. And I can totally imagine that it's every man for themselves in China, honestly. And there's no shame in doing that, right? That's the thing that's missing, right? There would be shame if you got out of your car and did that you ran to reserve that space for you. You would feel I'm just going to do it because I really, really, really just want that car park, and I don't care but I'll just cop the shame. But you would feel the shame, right?
Oh yeah.
But
I think as a man doing it, you'd feel more than shame.
Yeah. But I guarantee you she did not feel shame, right?
Yeah. All right. Well. Let me. Obviously, I'll tell you how it went down. But let me just ask you a hypothetical. If you were in the car and you had your nose pulled in, and there's an Asian lady in a puffer jacket, a nylon puffer jacket, kind of in the spot now, what would you have done?
I think I probably would have like stuck up for myself. Like I would have probably leaped forward as much as I could, tap the horn sort of thing. Like I probably would have like been pretty assertive, I think,
Yeah.
in that situation.
So
like,
you're creeping forward, maybe give her a horn.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's not like the other car can come in if you're halfway through, right? And then it just becomes like an argument about who's right and wrong. And then it's like the public shame of like this lady not letting you in. And it's everyone like she's the one that's going to look bad to everyone else, not you. So
Yeah. But wouldn't they? Okay. All right. So I'll reveal the next stage of the story. So that's exactly what this man did. So it was a white Australian couple in a car, and they were outraged, rightly so. And so they had pulled their nose in, and they kind of they got to the stage where so he wound down the window and just started a conversation with her, saying, and I don't know, there wasn't a lot back from her. She was just kind of shaking her head and saying, car coming around kind of thing. And he was going on, this is, you're not a car, this is a car spot, and all this kind of stuff, and you can't reserve it, and kind of getting generally upset with her. That didn't work. So he did what you did. He wound the window back up and started creeping forward, and then horned her a bit. None of this was working. So she just stood her ground, and she didn't even move back. It was almost like, all right, you're going to hit me? And then he gets to this game of chicken, and then I'm sure the realization would have come upon him of who's got more time now.
Yeah.
Who has more time, right? If you're the type of crazy woman to run into a car spot, I feel like you're not going to beat that person in terms of stubbornness or waiting it out. And that's the problem. I think like it's almost like when you force an ultimatum with your child and you're like, look, if you don't do this, I'm giving you one more warning and I'm going to do something outrageous that you know you're never going to be able to keep. Right? Like, isn't it one of those situations where it's like the best thing to do would be to like just walk away from this crazy woman? Or is it like the terrorists win if that's the case?
No, I think I would have intrinsically enjoyed the experience. Part of me is like, no, I'm gonna like stand up, because what's
the
what's
highlight of my day?
Yeah, well, now I'm on holidays and I've got nothing better to do than do gardening. But you know what I mean, right? Like, yeah, I like by all means, like what you said is absolutely true, right? If say you were like driving to the shopping center because you'd bought tickets to like the 3:00 movie and it was like 2:45, and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm not messing about with this nonsense. But like, or you had, you didn't have long in the supermarket to begin with or whatever you were there for. But like, I had a similar experience actually today or this week, and it's still ongoing. So we've recently moved homes, and I had to cancel my internet at my old home. And I was well within my rights to do that because it's just like a month. There's no contract. It's like month to month or whatever. And they wouldn't firstly, I couldn't cancel online. So that was like, okay, because that's usually my preferred method.
The Bezos special.
I had to call them up to cancel it. I'm like, okay, well, it's a pain in the ass, but just do that. Like, just do what I got to do. And then they're like, we changed our system and we actually because you had like 2 people listed on your account, you actually need to re-verify your identity and you need to provide us with like a copy of your identification document. I said, like, I just want to cancel my account. Like, I don't care what system change you've like at the back end you've got. Like, that's your problem. I just want to cancel my account. Like, that's all I want to do. Said, oh yeah, well, we can't do anything until you do this thing. I'm like, well, like, actually, no, like, I don't want to provide a telecommunications company my ID after like all the data breaches and all that stuff. Like, why should I have to do that to begin with out of principle? But like, even just generally, like, this is a barrier. So I'm going to name and shame. This was TPG.
No.
So then what happened is I'm like, we've got to send you something and some form to fill out online and you'll get it. And then we'll call you within 24 hours. I'm like, oh God, okay. this is all just to cancel my account. So I get this thing. I actually just do it because I can't be bothered to like it's a pain in the ass. Like I just, okay, here you go. Here's the fucking photo of my passport. Like, why the fuck do I have to provide this? But I'll do it just because I want to end this thing. But they never call me back. They don't process the thing, the ID check. So I have to call them back again. I'm on the phone for an hour, like waiting to like speak to someone to cancel this thing. And then they can't fix it even after I've done that, jump through whatever hoops they've got. And by this stage, like, I'm like, well, no, this is fucked, right? And the guy says, I'll call you back within 4 hours, right? Because I'll follow it up or whatever. I'm like, okay, whatever. Doesn't return my call. So I call back again today. I'm like, so I'm straight into like, like beast mode, right?
Customer service beast mode.
So the first thing they do is ask, oh, so why are you, oh, can I ask why you're canceling your service? I'm like, I'm not telling you out of principle. It's not a requirement for me to tell you why I'm canceling it, right? Okay. First red flag that something's wrong with this customer. And then, so there's actually like a term and condition in the contract that like you have to give like 30 days notice to cancel, right? But then I just say, oh, look, because the time value of that I've spent talking to you today or over these weeks to cancel it, I'm going to request that you waive the 30 days, and so there's no further charges. And that like I wanted to give them that one. I wanted to rile them up. I wanted to have the argument, and like I wanted to like ask for more. Like I almost felt like saying, I want you to compensate me for my time like that I've spent here. So anyway, sorry to take us down this rabbit hole, but like the point is, I wanted to have the argy-bargy with them, even though I knew like it would take me more time to have it out with them, right? But I wanted to, because like it was just like that feeling of like justice, right? Pursuing the pursuit of justice.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was like, where are you going with this analogy? And then I realized that the same thing is happening where you're still shouting at an Asian woman in this situation. No, but
hey, it was a bloke, and I think he was Indian.
Unfortunately, I am also a customer, and anyway, I won't get into that. But the end result was that actually the white Australian couple backed out, and so they must have come to this realization that either they didn't have the time, someone needed to go to the toilet, or they just thought it would be best to kind of move on, right? But you should have seen because we were all kind of backed up while this was happening, right? Because the car couldn't get in and we couldn't get around the car. And so when this finally happened, and I think that probably was a good analogy too, because the couple trying to get into the car, doing the right car spot, doing the right thing, also had the added pressure that they were holding everyone up behind them. And so it's this kind of classic Israel-Palestine thing. No, I won't go there. But that they were kind of playing by the rules of modern Australian etiquette, and they felt some responsibility that they were the ones inconveniencing everyone, even though there was this crazy Asian woman trying to hold a car spot by standing in it, right? So they were under pressure to kind of keep on going, and so they finally did. But you should have seen the string of abuse from people then driving past this Asian woman. And there was one, and I don't want to, again, while we're in the whole stereotypes and typecasting, but I knew there was to be good, because in 2 spots ahead of me, there was a white Hilux ute, and it didn't look like one of those fancy ones. It looked like a true like working ute, and I'm like, oh man, this guy's going to go ape shit. I could tell he was getting frustrated, right? You could see the hands going up through the rear view mirror and everything. So he went down his window, and he just said, he said, I hope you eat rice, shit, and cunt. It didn't even make sense. He's just so angry with this woman. He couldn't even get the sentence out, but the words rice, shit, and cunt came out. And he like burned off into the distance. And I'm like, This is like like a little microcosm of Australia right here.
But these, these social norms, like they actually really are important. And when you don't intrinsically share the social norms yourself, it's hard to really get behind them. And that's where I think there's tensions. Because I mentioned like, oh yeah, of course this like little Asian lady, like, I've seen what they do in China, like they're like madmen over there kind of thing. But like equally, like when I was in China, like I was also quite, like I didn't have any regard for their social norms and like things like, you know what I mean? Like
That's because the white ones are better, right?
Well, if they're not important to you, you just don't follow them, right? And that's probably what we're seeing here. But I would have just like, if I was the couple that ended up backing down, I would have just gone back later and keyed their car. That would have been the more proportionate and sensible thing to do.
What's funny though is like whenever you see these things online, I'm pretty sure they're staged online, right? Because the conversation doesn't feel quite right, doesn't feel wild enough, and it's too articulate. In some ways, we're all that Hilux driver trying to say eat rice and die, but just a couple stuff comes out of your mouth. But in the comments of those sections on those on social media, it's always like, oh, you should have hit her, you should have run her over. I would have just. And then people are like, oh, just get out of the car and push her out of the way. Easy done. What are you doing? Having this conversation with her. And it's all like this hyper-aggressive social media responses about it. And I'm like, really? You're going to get out of your car? First of all, you're really going to run her over, right? Because the moment you touch her in any way, like this new level of escalation happens, right? Like, and you don't know what's going to happen, right? Like all of a sudden, is there claims? Is she going to pretend to be hurt? Or what's going to happen? Even worse, if you get out of the car and try to like move her physically out of the way, which would be easy enough to do, but then you've got like a hate crime on your hands. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a bad situation, and probably the best thing to do, probability-wise, is just to move on. But you do that, and you probably develop a rage tumor.
It's like a loss of face, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's ask listener questions. So this is straight off, hot off the press. I'll give you first dibs at it. But the question is, hey guys, I've been a loyal listener for a while and really appreciate the deep dives you take on complex issues. In your recent episode, you discussed immigration and its impact on Australia's culture, economy, and infrastructure. I'm curious, given the different perspectives on immigration, from the necessary influx of skilled workers to the humanitarian aspect of refugees, where do we draw the line? How do we balance our economic needs with maintaining the Australian way of life in commas, inverted commas? And at what point does being open to the world compromise the values and lifestyle we cherish? Cheers, and keep up the great work. Well, if that is not the best question to answer following our discussion just then, I don't know what else is.
That question. So number one, thank you for the question, because that was like a Q&A level of professionalism that was displayed. So it's definitely not to typecast you, listener, but definitely you are someone who is over the age of 50, because you just don't get questions like that anymore from young people. Okay, look, if we're going to the car park analogy, it's like, is there some kind of test that you could apply that would give you a high probability of predicting someone would break a social etiquette, such a fundamental social etiquette as running into a parking spot and trying to reserve it, right? Like, is that even possible? And I don't think it is in the context of like that situation, right? Like, I don't know, like, and I also don't really buy your explanation either that it's just Wild West in China, right? Like, I understand that, but they're not in China anymore, like where they came from, right? Like they would intrinsically know that was wrong.
No, I don't think they do.
They 100% do, because
no. I do disagree, because
they just know they can get away with it. They know it's wrong.
No, okay, so
because it's like it's demeaning. It's like they're not idiots, right? Like, and there's someone yelling at you.
No, it's the difference between guilt and shame, right? We have guilt about these things. because we have the attitude that that is fundamentally wrong and we couldn't live with ourselves if we did something like that. But like a shame culture is only, okay, well, if I get caught, I'll look bad and I'll lose face, and that's the only reason. But I don't really care if I do. There's no guilt associated with these things, right? If you've grown up in an environment where you just look out for yourself, and like let's just like be fair for one moment, right? Like if you lived through like the Great Leap Forward, where your family starved, and then the Cultural Revolution, where you were sent down to the countryside to work in a labor camp, and or your family were, and you basically lived in a fairly like tumultuous period of your life was basically just ever change. Like, who else are you going to owe your loyalty to other than yourself, right? And your family. So there's some other things quite unique to China, but like, I'm not going to accept the premise that you're trying to say, which is that they know it's wrong, like, because that's just not like, if you go to China and you experience these sorts of situations in China, whether it's getting on the subway, whether it's driving, even like driving on the roads, like everyone is just trying to get ahead. There's no shared kind of understanding. There's no mental model or what's the word I'm looking for? Where you can project. There's not like no mirror neurons like associated with like what it's like to be the other person. That's not been built into the culture, so it doesn't exist.
It's a human culture. Like,
no, this is absolutely in her mind. She's thinking, well, of course it's fine that I'm here. Like, I was here first. I'm holding this car space. Who's this fucker trying to come and take this car space that I've reserved? Like, it's all your perspective, right? It's only like based on our sense of norms and rules that it's unacceptable. Like, I don't think she's thinking, oh, I know that like I'm really breaking some rules here, but I'm just going to like, I'm more stubborn. Like, I feel think like that's what's going on here.
Again, I just don't believe it, because when you're doing something that is someone's telling you is wrong, and then you've got a whole line of cars beeping you and hurling abuse at you, I don't know, maybe you might cotton on that this is not the dumb thing.
She probably thinks they're beeping at the car that's trying to...
No, but dude, the car left, they gave up, and then a string of people are yelling at her. Like, surely she's going to get it.
Okay, but just, have you not ever driven on a road in... Well, I don't know if you've driven on a road in China, but like, are there
I have.
Countries where literally like everyone's beeping all the time, right? It's just this is the shit that this is like. It just means like a beep on a road in China means just be careful because I'm about to overtake you in this really dangerous way.
This
right?
is like
It doesn't mean anything.
This is like when tourists go to the Vatican and they clearly say there's no flash photography, and there are people there yelling it in all different languages, and people are just still ignoring them and trying to take pictures. Are you saying that it's like a cultural aspect that they don't realize they can't,
it's the same,
and they keep on
exactly
doing
what
it?
I was saying, like guilt and shame, right? So if you... Okay, let's just take for granted, and I wouldn't actually assume this, but let's just say that everybody sees the sign and is very aware that you can't. That the rule is you're not allowed to take photos, right? Let's just take that as a given. And then there's some cultures that continue to take photos, and others that don't. The ones that don't are like would feel guilt at breaking that rule, right? They would feel like, I'm doing the wrong thing, so I'm not going to do the wrong thing. But there's others that it's just like, it's all right, I can just like take a photo, like no one will see what I'm doing. Like, and so it just depends. Like there is a cultural overlay here, and we're not all the same. Like, it's not that, like, culture is really powerful, like especially with that scenario, because like that car park scenario, like I actually don't know what the rules would be or what the cultural rules would be, but like it's completely plausible that kind of thing actually happens. Now, whether I don't know where she's from, she might not even be from China, but let's just say she is from China. Like it's totally plausible that if you did that in China, that's like au fait, right? And remember, we're talking about a country that didn't really have mass ownership of cars like beyond like the last 20 years or even 10 years. So like there's all this room for like a completely different culture to emerge.
I understand what you're saying, but to me, 100%, she is an adult, and whether she feels shame or guilt or not, she knows that she is doing something that is hurting other people, that is frustrating other people, right? And she, like, I don't think.
Yeah, but even that's cultural, right? Even
well, okay, well then let's put it out there. Then there are some cultures that are better than others, because if is part of your culture not to have respect for other people, like you're from a culture, say, that doesn't believe in cues, or doesn't, believe in, some of the common courtesies that happen. Like, I actually think that is a really poor reflection on the culture. And it also means that when you integrate that into society, you're actually making it harder and harder to have a diverse, like a good immigration policy, an open immigration policy.
But in this example, it could be that in her mind, actually, no, like this is just some stupid Australian thing. Like what is this silly idea that you can't reserve a car park? So if this is causing such a big problem, all that needs to happen is this dickhead Aussie white bloke that's trying to muscle in on my car park that I've reserved. All that needs, the only solution to this is he's got to stop being a dickhead, and he just needs to like drive on, like,
all right, so
skedaddle.
Okay,
right?
let's take it closer to home. So say it's part of the white Australian culture to feel like they should be able to walk on Uluru. It's my country. I should be able to climb that motherfucker whenever I want to. We're the biggest and the most powerful kind of racial group. Why should we give in to the Indigenous people who say that we can't walk on them?
Well, I think you'll find there's plenty of Australians who would say, fuck that. If this is ridiculous, there were, for many years there were signs saying, like, we request that, you don't walk up Uluru, la-di-da-di-da. And there were heaps of Aussies that said, fuck that shit, I'm going to walk up it. And it was, it's only recently that in the last however many years that it's become a thing you actually can't do. But like, there were heaps. It was a national tradition for us to do that, right? And I think that's actually a good analogy here, where if we don't respect the norms that of the culture, like if we're disrespectful of, let's say, the Indigenous cultural request not to walk on this rock, then if you're of that mindset, then you'd completely disregard it, and you're very happy to proceed with how you feel you should be able to behave, right? Whereas, so then translating that to this example, in her mind, she's like, oh, this is fucking stupid Aussie fucking bullshit. Like, why would I don't agree with this. Why would I follow it, right?
I don't think that's the obvious place you would land on that. Is trying to say that obviously we're part of a culture that, yeah, there are people that might think that they should be able to walk on the rock, but we have chosen as a society to respect that.
Yeah, but lots of Australians.
No, but it's still enforced now.
But like, if you take a straw poll, so there was like a government decision to ban it, but like, and actually, just as an aside, one area of difference relating to that is that the actual rock is on privately owned land, owned by Indigenous people. So like they can actually write the rules, right?
Yeah, but that's not why though. That's not why.
But as an aside, for years and years and years and years and years, if you take a straw poll of Australians, do you think you should be able to walk on Ayers Rock? Notwithstanding that it's not allowed, I think you would be shocked at the amount of Australians who say, yeah, fuck yeah, I should be able to, right?
Yeah, but you might think that, and you might say that in some weird poll or whatever. But let me tell you, you go around to any white person's house, they'll have photos of them climbing the rock from
exactly.
In 20
so
years
they
ago.
did.
But they won't be up anymore. They won't be displayed in their house anymore. And that's because
I don't know about
that's
that.
because of the cultural norm here.
I don't. I think you would find that.
No, mate.
No, absolutely.
It's not going to be a picture of them and their family climbing Ayers Rock on display anymore. In fact, a lot of people are like embarrassed about it.
Can we just like accept and outline that like the
Sorry,
like
Uluru.
the proportion of the population that prior to this had a photo on their wall of them on Ayers Rock like is probably very, very, very low. So I think you're engaging in like
I've seen a few back in the day.
some slither of like a conceptual universe that I can't quite put my head into. But like as a general proposition today, if you ask Australians, like how many 25 million people in Australia, now it might be a majority that say, yeah, it's appropriate that like, that
we need a referendum.
It might, but I think you would find that it would be closer to the result of the no vote in the voice referendum than it would be 100% yes saying it's appropriate.
Andy,
like, you know what I mean?
we have totally butchered this question, and
yeah, I know.
if you think about how much care it was made, we have butchered this. Because I tell you what, though, like, okay, let's bring it back for one last little bite of the cherry. What if it happens if this woman who was reserving the spot was like the world's best brain surgeon or something that we really need in Australia? Like, does that somehow make it okay?
It's not about it being okay or not okay by our standards. It's about what is motivating her and like what ultimately.
If you took a poll,
can you say about that?
If you took a poll, like you're saying about Uluru, of whether this behaviour was acceptable, it would be 99.999% saying it was not acceptable.
I disagree. I think in Australia, yes.
Well, we're talking about Australia.
and probably not in Australia. Probably in Australia it would be much lower than 99.9. Like I think if 99.9 is the equivalent of saying pretty much 100%, then I think it would probably be closer to like 80% than it would be 100%.
You think 20% of people would find it acceptable to reserve a spot?
Yeah, I think there would be a not insignificant. Like there would be some percentage of the population who would have a different view on it, right? But anyway, I don't want to argue about that. But if you, it might even be that if you ask that question in like, let's say China, and you put the hypothetical to them, it might be even that still a majority would say it was wrong in China, but it would be much closer to like, it would be divided, right? There would be, whereas here it would be like closer to what, like, I think what you're trying to say when you say 99.9 is that it would be like, it's a no-brainer, right? It wouldn't be a no-brainer there. There would be different views, right? And I guess that's what I'm trying to say is that the potential for a difference of opinion on this question in like based on cultural factors would like, it's not like people rarely when they act like it's not like people don't tend to kind of say, oh, I know I'm totally in the wrong here, but like I don't give a shit, right? Like that's usually, I know I'm the villain here, but I'm just going to be the villain. I don't care. I like being the villain. Like people rarely do that. People usually approach things with the attitude of, I'm actually in the right here and I'm doing the right thing. It's just that other people.
I don't think so. I think it's like queue jumpers. They'll do it, and if they get told off, they might back off, or they might try to push on.
Okay, who's like the classic queue jumper? The classic queue jumper. There's two in my mind. If you say like queue jumpers, there's two kinds of queue jumpers. There's the first category are those who are like basically for whatever reason rebel against society. So maybe youth, like queuing in like the line at a theme park or whatever, who like, oh yeah, I'll just like sneak in the line or whatever, who don't care, who almost like relish in the fact that they're defying society and their rules and its rules. And then the second category is like people who don't understand the rules, people who for whatever reason don't quite understand that this is a queue and that there's like a sense of order.
There are some cultures, and I'll just pick on the one that I have experience with because I am also from Asian heritage, that do not have the same regard for other people in these kind of public spaces, right? And you will find that is spread through different pockets of different countries, whether it comes to queues, whether it comes to common courtesy around shopping and snatching. I had experience with that when I was very young. Like there was like a sale on in Malaysia, and like people were like snatching it out of people's hands and stuff like that. Again, like lining up and stuff like that. Some of it seems like it's much more cultural than it is. So, for example, like in parts of Italy where they just don't form an orderly line, but doesn't seem to be like people trying to push in, they just don't form a line. So that seems innocent enough versus, say, like, you know, the Asian person kind of purposely cutting on because they want to get on first. You know, like I think that these things are different. But I mean, coming back to the question, these are not desirable traits. They do not make Australian society stronger. And you do not want to, in the idea of tolerance, kind of like, you want to try to minimize this, right? If the pitch is that you need to be tolerant of these cultural attitudes because this is part of immigration, I don't quite believe in that. I don't think that these are things that make this woman uniquely Chinese or whatever it is, or Malaysian. I think these is like, you're in a new country, you do have to respect some of the traditions and societal norms, and you can do that and without being oppressed. You know, like I don't think you need to kind of bring in every kind of cultural export and make it exactly the same as where they migrated from.
Okay, but like, let's disambiguate the situation from the question. So just to address that there's I mean, you said, there's like cultural reasons why, people like snatching or whatever. I guess what I'm fundamentally saying, there's nothing that we've discussed today that would change my mind about this, is that culturally, the question of like, is that kind of conduct or behavior a consequence of culture? And I think you've just sort of almost agreed in some respects, saying, is it a function of culture? It is yes, right? Because there's a different way that people behave.
The disagreement, though, Andy, was about, that sparked all this, was that the difference between whether they know it's right or wrong.
Yeah. So I'm being maybe more generous than you in that I'm saying that I could totally imagine that happening in China. Like, that is totally a thing that would happen in China. Now, there's a subsequent question that you might ask, which is, yeah, but like in China, if that happened, the person would know it's wrong, right? But what I'm kind of saying is that the fact that that kind of behavior happens in China, that people do that kind of thing in China, and let's say she is from China, I don't know if I'm just assuming, but but there's also other countries where similar kind of factors might be at play as well. But the fact that this is within the spectrum of behavior that your peers operate within almost takes the wind out of it being this really terrible, sacrilegious thing that you've done, right? So the fact that others do the same thing as you, or the fact that even if you kind of think, oh, well, it doesn't make sense to do that, but the fact that others are doing it means it's a normalized behavior. So that takes the wind out of the punch of it being this, it's wrong kind of thing, right? It's the equivalent of speeding, right? Everyone speeds in Australia. It's wrong, but like, we all do it, right? So it's the same. It's just that this particular thing that you've outlined around, securing a car park, it's more sensitive to us here in Australia because of our cultural values.
There's a more immediate and personal impact where you can see it, you can feel it, you can hear it. And so speeding, you don't get that straight away, because obviously speeding contributes to, accidents on the road. But most of the times, no one's there around to experience it or to experience the negative impact. When you have someone, a person, human to human, telling you, like, swearing at you, or, like, I think the message is pretty clear.
She could think, but again, she might think she's in the right. We don't. In fact, I think that only reinforces the argument that she probably did think she was in the right, because people don't tend to kind of continue down the garden path on something if they know they're wrong. And I think what you're probably trying to say is that no, she was like the most horrible like human being on the planet, and she was like all into it.
No.
But like,
I just think she knows that she's doing something that's inconveniencing others, and that it's wrong. There's a line of cars honking and yelling abuse at her. Like, she's not an idiot. Like, I think it's just like, how much do you want this cultural attitude thing to extend? Because you can get even more down the garden path of like bad behaviors, right?
All right, so just to wrap it up, because we spent a good amount of time. I think we'll call this the car park episode. But let me grant you a couple of things, right? So at some point, like from the initial so the act of reserving a car park and like defending it, maybe in a very less antagonistic circumstance, that's when it could be a bit more grey. But let's say to the circumstance that you've outlined, where it's like, no, like there's 100 people shouting at her that she's wrong,
Yeah,
and it should be crystal clear to her that she's wrong.
yeah,
but she's digging in and still doing it. Then that does change things a little bit, right? But then I kind of do think that's when then there's other psychological factors at play, where it's like loss of face. Like if you do you want to be that? Like, is there some kind of sense of like
do you want
what's
to be the
actually
type of person who does the right thing in overwhelming experience that you're doing the wrong thing?
But see, this is the thing, right? Admitting to yourself that you've done the wrong thing, that's a bit of a cost to you, right? So like it can just be that like it's easier just to like maintain in your mind that no, I was right all along, all these fuckers were wrong.
I'm going to bring one out.
I was right.
I'm going to bring one out of the archive just to wrap this up. When they renovated Pitt Street Mall, the shopping centre in Pitt Street Mall in the heart of Sydney, CBD, it was beautiful, marble everywhere. It was like the most opulent kind of like shopping place, right? And it attracted a lot of international people looking for brands at the time. I remember walking, and this is going back 5 or 6 years, I remember walking next to this woman, right? And she looked kind of like Middle Eastern, gorgeous, draped in, all the brand names and stuff. And as she was walking down the marble, like the marble pathway, she just turned her head and like spat, right? She like spat in the center on the floor, like not on the side or anything, just spat. And then this woman that was there like reprimanded her. I said, like, why did you do that? You can't spit here, kind of thing. That, and she stopped and she looked like really embarrassed, and she got a handkerchief out and she wiped it up. That's what I'm talking about. She's obviously come from a culture where it was totally okay to do that. It was crowded. It wasn't like she was expecting to get away with it. She understood it was wrong, and that's a lesson, right? And I've some Asian cultures do have a bit of spitting thing going on as well, right? But this is the thing. It's like a sliding scale. I do not believe that this woman did not have the capacity to understand she was doing something that was wrong.
Yeah, but like, as I said, I think the leap of faith from going from thinking you're in the right to acknowledging you're in the wrong, it's the analogy of like the human like riding the elephant. Yeah. Like, who's controlling the elephant? Is it the human controlling the elephant, or is it the elephant controlling itself, just taking the human wherever the elephant wants to go? And I think in this case, it's like, I wasn't there, so like I'm kind of just riffing and speculating here, but
I've painted as vividly as I can over the course of half an hour.
If the premise of her reserving the car park is that, yes, this is fine to do, then she could be just like, it's me against the world. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm just going to do what I think's right. And you're all fucked. Like, I don't care. Like, it's me and I'm right and I'm happy. I'm content with my actions. Like, the reason you're not conceding that you're wrong, it ceases to become like a question of like manners or doing the right thing to your fellow human. It becomes about like, no, I'm just like, I'm not going to concede that I was in the wrong because I was in the right, and I maintain I was in the right. Yeah. I'm not going to give an inch, and that is how like that happens all the time. Like, you see that all the time where people carry on like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's every culture has its blind spots. I mean, I think of even really highfalutin cultures like Parisians, and the fact that they don't pick up their dog shit, right? Like, isn't that just the pinnacle of like, we're high society, we believe in arts, we protect our culture fiercely. But if my dog shits in the pathway and someone else steps in it, I don't give a shit. I don't care. I have no responsibility to.
But can I give like a reverse analogy, right? Imagine like Westerners in like a place like Japan, right? Japan has super kind of like it's a very tight culture. It's very very restrictive. Lots of kind of rules
Etiquettes,
about
yeah.
how to behave and what to do and what not to do and all this sort of stuff. And like, if like Westerners or anyone for that matter goes into Japan, they're like, well, fuck, I'm not going to follow those rules. Those rules are like for Japanese people, not for me. I don't know those rules, but like, to Japanese people, like they're super polite, so they probably aren't going to pull you up on it in the same way as the rice shit fuck cunt dude in the Hilux did. But like,
which is a Japanese car, by the way.
But like, nonetheless, like I'm sure there's plenty of instances of like foreigners in Japan behaving in this equivalent kind of.
Look, it started off bad because race was the center, but it's not particularly a race thing, because there's other cultures that do this, and Americans make mockery of European culture all the time. They're famous for it, right? So it happens all over the place, but doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's right. Just because you can explain the mechanics around something doesn't mean it's a good thing for the society that you're migrating into.
Okay, so can I, for the first time, because I haven't yet let go of the topic we've been discussing on the car park, but to actually address the question, right, for the first time, the Australian way of life, for me, like, do we want to like maintain and, protect like the values, Australian values, whatever, and then maybe give you a bit more ground than I've been giving you. Yeah, we don't want to import, like we have like our cultural values, our norms of what's like acceptable, and like, for better or worse, I think we want to maintain those. We want people who will come in and adapt and follow our norms and cultural values or whatever. That's different to like saying that they need to like cricket and stuff like that. They don't need to be the ochre Aussie bloke kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
That's just generally for us to function well. Like we want people to want to lean into our rules and learn them and be of a mindset that they'll kind of adapt rather than continue on with their separate ways. But like, what is it to be an Australian anyway? What is the Australian way of life? I don't know. I kind of think the Australian way of life, even in the last 20 years, has changed dramatically.
Didn't seem that way in the RSL the other day.
Hey, it was like renovated. It was completely different. We're evolving and we're getting a bit more refined, I think. And I think that's largely because we've got a bit of new blood in the country, right?
Yeah, I agree. All right. I think the dynamic had to be this way.
Yeah, but I think implicitly I'm defending her and her Asianness, right?
Yeah, but that's the good.
I think you're attacking
the white girl. The question has to be like race on race.